Good afternoon. I'm your host, Brian Buckmire, here at Law&Crime Trial Network, and we have a special report for you today. Earlier today, we are finding out that Ghislaine Maxwell, a close associate with Jeffrey Epstein, was taken into federal custody on allegations of conspiracy to entice minors into sexual acts, as well as concealment of her conduct and other related charges. Let's start off with where this all begins, and that is with Jeffrey Epstein. Let's look at an excerpt from the Miami Herald that exposed Jeffrey Epstein's conduct, or alleged conduct.
We were little girls.
I was 16.
I was 16.
I started going to him when I was like 14 turning 15.
If you think at 14, $200, that's a lot of money at 14 years old. I mean, that's a lot of money now.
She's like, oh, do you need to make any extra money? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, I can give you, like $200. It's this older guy in Palm Beach. He gets a lot of massages from girls. That was really...
They were recruited by someone who was adept at finding girls that would be willing to, go to a house for a few $100s, and as it started out, give a man a back rub, but many cases it turned into something far worse than that, elevated to a crime, and a serious crime, in some cases sexual batteries.
My life would have been different if I would have never went to Jeffrey Epstein's house. It was just a dark turning point in my life.
On June 30th, 2008, Jeffrey Epstein, a Palm Beach multimillionaire hedge fund manager, received what might have been the most lenient plea deal for a serial sex offender in U.S. history. The Miami Herald identified over 60 of his victims, just young middle and high school girls at the time of the abuse. More than a decade later, several of them are talking for the first time about how they were molested by Epstein and believe they were betrayed by the very prosecutors who were supposed to hold Epstein accountable.
All right, so I am joined via Skype with Bernarda Villalona, a criminal defense attorney, as well as former Philadelphia prosecutor. Bernarda, thank you for being here with us. Let's break this down, because I know we were both kind of looking at this indictment. It just came in today. What were some of your initial reactions as to the indictment and some of the allegations?
Wow, I'll tell you this, Brian. I was surprised that it came down during this time. I mean, with no one actually knowing that it was coming. It was kind of like out of the blue. Like, we expected this to happen. The allegations are just so extreme, like what this woman was capable of doing. But finally, we have her.
Yeah. Let's break down some of the allegations. Like I said, we're literally breaking down the indictment here. It appears that there are 3 alleged minor victims, and because of the sensitivity of the allegations, the indictment doesn't name them. I would tell our viewers it's very similar to the Harvey Weinstein trial as to how that information is going to come out. We'll probably learn about these alleged victims' names closer to the trial. There are 3 alleged victims here. And as Bernarda said, the allegations are gruesome. We're talking about enticing young women. I don't think you call them young women. They're actually girls. Enticing girls to travel to his New Mexico house, to his New York home, or enticing one woman from England, in London, to try to get them to normalize sexual activities of massaging Jeffrey Epstein while naked, doing sexual acts. And Ghislaine Maxwell is actually accused of participating in some of these sexual acts. Based on some of those allegations of participating in some of these acts, Bernarda, do you think we could potentially see increased or additional charges?
Absolutely, because not only did she organize for it to actually take place, but she was an active participant in some of these acts, which makes it so much more despicable for her to have been participating in it. So you knew full well what was going on and what Jeffrey Epstein was going to do, and we're getting joy out of doing it. So definitely, I think she will be getting extreme extra penalties if she is convicted.
And now, before we got onto the show, we have Bob Bianchi coming on later. He represents defendants with these types of crimes and charges. I don't want to overstep too much. He's going to get into the nitty-gritty of a lot of this based on his experience and expertise. But he's telling me that that Maxwell is looking at 10 years just for the 10 years to life, just for the enticement charges. These charges hold heavy, heavy jail time. We actually have the presser right now. We are looking at it live as the federal prosecutor is coming out to tell us more about the charges. Let's take a listen.
Afternoon, before a magistrate judge in the District of New Hampshire.
You'll recall that the indictment against Jeffrey Epstein that we filed in July of 2019 charged Epstein with sexual abuse of young girls from 2002 through 2005. This case against Ghislaine Maxwell is the prequel to the earlier case that we brought against Jeffrey Epstein. As alleged, starting in 1994 until at least 1997, Maxwell had a personal and professional relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell was among Epstein's closest associates and helped him exploit girls who were as young as 14 years old. Maxwell played a critical role in helping Epstein to identify, befriend, and groom minor victims for abuse. In some cases, Maxwell participated in the abuse herself. As alleged, Maxwell and Epstein had a method. Typically, they would befriend these young girls by asking them questions about their lives, pretending to be taking an interest in them. They would take them to the movies and treat them to shopping trips. Maxwell would encourage these young girls to accept offers from Epstein to pay for their travel and their education, making these young victims feel indebted to Jeffrey Epstein. After developing a rapport with the victims, Maxwell then tried to normalize sexual abuse with a minor victim through a process known as grooming. For example, Maxwell would discuss sexual topics with the victim and undress in front of the victim, or be present for sex acts involving the minor victims and Epstein. Maxwell's presence as an adult woman helped put the victims at ease. As Maxwell and Epstein intended, this grooming process left the minor victims susceptible to sexual abuse. That abuse included sexualized massages during which the minor victim was fully or partially nude. These sexualized massages developed into sexual encounters for which Maxwell, in some instances, was present and participated. Maxwell and Epstein worked together to entice these minor victims to travel to Epstein's residences, depicted on the other chart at the front of the room. His residence in New York City, on the Upper East Side, as well as Palm Beach, Florida, and Santa Fe, New Mexico. Some of the acts of abuse also took place in Maxwell's residence in London, England. In addition to allegedly enabling and participating in the sexual abuse of young victims, Maxwell compounded her crimes by repeatedly lying in 2016 when she was questioned under oath. And we have charged those lies in 2 perjury counts. Maxwell lied because the truth, as alleged, was almost unspeakable. Maxwell enticed minor girls, got them to trust her, then delivered them into the trap that she and Epstein had set for them. She pretended to be a woman they could trust. All the while, she was setting them up to be sexually abused by Epstein, and in some cases, by Maxwell herself. Today, after many years, Ghislaine Maxwell finally stands charged for her role in these crimes. These charges we announced today are the latest result of our investigation into Epstein and the people around him who facilitated his abuse of minor victims. That investigation remains ongoing. My office and the FBI remain committed to doing all within our ability to bring justice to individuals who enabled, facilitated, and participated in the acts of abuse. Combating the exploitation of children is a priority of our office. We are committed to pursuing and prosecuting those who exploit and abuse minors, in this case, in every case. And to that end, I want to say to anyone who is watching or who hears about this prosecution, if you believe you are a victim of Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell, or anyone else who helped them, regardless of when it occurred, or have information about the conduct alleged in the indictment unsealed today, please let us know. You can reach the FBI and have access to victim and witness services by calling us at 1-800-CALL-FBI. To my left is William Sweeney, the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's field office. And also to my left is Commissioner Dermot McShay and Chief of Detectives Rodney Harrison. I want to thank them and their teams for their dedication and professionalism in seeing this investigation through to the end. I also want to acknowledge and thank the career prosecutors of my office who are handling the investigation and prosecution of this case. Alex Ross Miller, Maureen Comey, and Allison Moe. I want to also thank their chiefs, Russell Capone and Edward Discant, the chiefs of the Public Corruption Unit. Finally, I want to thank and commend the brave women who are willing to come forward decades after their abuse and tell us what happened to them, without whom these charges could not have been brought today. And we thank them for their courage, and we are proud to stand here on their behalf in bringing this case. I now want to invite up our good friend, Assistant Director Bill Sweeney.
Thank you, Audrey. Almost 1 year ago, when our offices stood before you and announced the arrest of Jeffrey Epstein, I stated that preserving the innocence of children is among the most important responsibilities we carry as adults. Too often, adults in our society have turned a blind eye to the type of criminal behavior that we announced back then and announce again today. The villains in these outrageous crimes are the adult perpetrators, not the youth, who are our neighbors, our students, vulnerable foster children, and teens seeking support. Today, we announced the arrest of one of the villains in this investigation. Early this morning, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested in Bradford, New Hampshire, by FBI special agents and NYPD detectives from the FBI NYPD Crimes Against Children Task Force. Our team from New York was assisted by special agents assigned to our Boston, Newark, New Haven, and Albany field offices. We've been discreetly keeping tabs on Maxwell's whereabouts as we worked this investigation, and more recently we learned she had slithered away to a gorgeous property in New Hampshire, continuing to live a life of privilege while her victims live with the trauma inflicted upon them years ago. We moved when we were ready, and Ms. Maxwell was arrested without incident. Like Epstein, Ms. Maxwell chose to blatantly disregard the law and her responsibility as an adult, using whatever means she had at her disposal to lure vulnerable youth into behavior they should never have been exposed and which creates lasting harm. We allege that from at least 1994 through at least 1997, Ms. Maxwell assisted Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of minor girls by helping to recruit, entice, groom, and abuse children under the age of 18. She befriended the innocent, attempted to normalize sexual abuse, and worked to put victims at ease, aware the entire time of the abuse that would follow. When questioned about her conduct in 2016, we allege Ms. Maxwell lied under oath. I'd like to take a moment again to speak directly to the victims. There never was, nor shall there be, an excuse for the criminal behavior you were subjected to. We know that your quest for justice has been met with great disappointment and that reliving these events is traumatic. When we met you, we told you that in the eyes of the FBI, you come first. I would like to thank you for the trust you place in our investigative teams as we work to hold the adult perpetrators accountable. For the many victims of other adult perpetrators who may be listening or get word of today's announcement. The example set by the women involved in this investigation has been a powerful one. They persevered against the rich and the connected, and they did so without a badge, a gun, or a subpoena, and they stood together. I have no doubt the bravery exhibited by the women in this investigation has empowered others to speak up about the crimes that they have been subjected to. If you are listening today and are the victim of child sex trafficking, please call 1-800-CALL-FBI or contact us online at tips.fbi.gov. If you are an adult who believes a child or a teen is being exploited, or believe a child or a teen has exhibited signs of exploitation, please contact law enforcement. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's website is a great resource for information about the indicators of sex trafficking. Take a few minutes to educate yourself. Click on the issues section of that website. Take a moment to learn how to spot the vulnerable and protect them. The website is missingkids.org. Finally, I want to extend my sincere thanks to the task force in New York, the leadership and the prosecutors of the Southern District of New York. You have quietly and professionally executed your mission as public servants, advocating for the most vulnerable in society and holding perpetrators accountable, regardless of their perceived wealth, connections, or the passage of time. Thank you for putting the victims first. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Shea.
Good afternoon, everyone. Audrey, Bill, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. And I'll echo really their words. In my view, we are here for one reason today and one reason only, for the victims, for the survivors of these heinous crimes. And I will remind everyone that although we are talking about periods of time 20 or close to 30 years in the past, for the victims, the survivors of these sexual assaults, these crimes are as fresh today and the impact that they caused on their psyche as they were then. I want to take a special moment to thank Chief Rodney Harrison and the men and women of the New York City Police Department that worked on this case hand in hand with Bill Sweeney's special agents. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take questions. We'll take questions.
Audrey, quick question on the investigation. How long have you been tracking Ms. Maxwell, and when was this indictment originally filed? If you could just kind of give us a sense of what it was like to track her, if at any point, you lost track of her, what was going on in the past couple of months?
Well, I think that Bill Sweeney has given you a sense of that an eye was being kept and information was being collected, and then the indictment was just recently voted and filed, and that was when we were able and prepared to move to arrest her.
Prince Andrew is someone who's been in your office. Do you still want to talk to him? Would that be as a witness or as a suspect?
I'm not going to comment on anyone's status in this investigation, but I will say that we would welcome Prince Andrew coming in to talk with us. We would like to have the benefit of his statement.
So his advice is that you need to offer all the grants, let's get things going again. Would you be prepared to do that?
I have no further comment beyond what I just said, which is that our doors remain open, as we've previously said, and we would welcome him coming in and giving us an opportunity to hear his statement. Yes?
Why now? Why here after arresting Jeffrey Epstein?
We were working hard on this investigation this past year. It's not easy to put together a case that goes back that far, but it was not, and there's nothing other than we did the investigation and we were ready at this time to proceed. I couldn't hear your question.
How long has she been in New Hampshire?
I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to comment on that.
Where you ultimately arrested her? Was that her home? Was it someone else's home?
And that's who I will not comment on. That's where we found her this morning.
In making the decision to charge, you reached back to an era in the mid-90s. Is there any physical evidence, or is it merely the word of the women, the unnamed victims that are?
Again, I won't comment beyond the scope of the indictment. You can read the indictment and see the kind of allegations we made, and therefore the evidence that we will bring forward to prove those you can kind of figure out. But I'm not going to comment on the specific evidence in the case. That will be seen in the event that she goes to trial.
Audrey, in the original indictment against Epstein, there were allegations in the 2000s. This predates that. Can you speak to why there's not overlap between those two?
That I cannot speak to. You just see one indictment covers one period and the other covers the other, and whatever is not said is not something I can speak to. It's beyond the four corners of the indictment.
Did the firing of Jeffrey Berman affect at all the timing of this arrest?
Not at all. Not at all.
Audrey, will your office be seeking to have Ms. Maxwell jailed before trial? And if so, would you particular arrangements made for Thursday?
We will be seeking detention, and we are sensitive to that concern, and certainly will be in dialogue with the Bureau of Prisons about it.
The perjury charges, do you think that will undermine her ability to use her testimony against co-conspirators, i.e. if she were willing to testify against others? Doesn't that undermine that? What's your thinking about that?
This sometimes happens where there are perjury charges, and people can go on from there and become cooperators, if that's what you're asking. So I'm not concerned about that. In the event that she were to become a cooperator, I think that we can deal with that.
Audrey, are you tracking to other locations besides New Hampshire? Has she been tracked to other locations besides?
Yeah, I'm not going to speak to that. We're not going to talk about that. Thank you.
All right, so those are some of the preliminary facts that we're hearing. Going through this again, I'm counting a total of 6 counts. I'm joined here with Bernarda Villalona, former prosecutor. Bernarda, break this down for me. This is just an indictment. So as I see it, this is a roadmap towards prosecution, towards a trial. What do you see from this roadmap? It seems pretty airtight. I can't see a way out of it from a defense attorney. And I bet you that the feds have the receipts for all these actions too. What are you thinking?
Just looking at the indictment, Brian, it does look that the feds do have a very strong case, especially when you're talking about not just one victim, but multiple victims. Because in cases where you just have one victim, the defense attorneys can always just attack the credibility of that one victim. But when you're talking about having multiple victims and it piling up on each other, it just makes the case much stronger. But again, this is just the very beginning. We have an indictment. From here, it goes into motion practice, discovery, and I don't see a trial happening in this case, if a trial is to happen in this case, at least for another year. But it seems like the feds do have a very strong case, and I'm very upset and just disgusted at these allegations of this woman.
Yeah, this goes beyond like the sickness that you might think that someone has of preying upon young children. This describes a woman who is grooming young children to give sexual pleasures to another man and then participating in one way, shape, or form. I can't see a justification, a legal argument. This just screams depraved and evil in so many different ways. I can't see how anything happens but a jail sentence, and a very long one at that, after potentially a trial. Do you see otherwise?
Absolutely. I don't see what other defense can this woman have aside from just going through the credibility. She can't say it's duress because she was working and with Epstein for a very long time. So what is she going to go with? Just trying to attack the credibility of these witnesses and just take it from there. But she will serve a lengthy sentence if convicted.
Yeah. So I would tell people to continue to follow this story. Like I said, 6 counts in total, the first 2 being enticement of a minor to travel to engage in sexual acts. Count 3 would be conspiracy to transport minor, along with count 4 as well. And count 5 or 6 comes from perjury, where in April 22nd of 2016 in the SDNY, Maxwell was asked these questions pretty directly as to whether or not she knew about minors giving massages to Epstein or this type of scheme. We've got about 30 seconds, Bernarda, because we've got Bob Bianchi coming back with us after the break. He's actually done these types of cases. When it comes to the perjury, how damning is that we've had these statements kind of written down to see?
Well, that's actually the charge that's going to be the easiest to prove, because you have her sworn testimony already. So that would be the easiest to prove. I mean, the hardest charges for me and the most disgusting ones are the ones that having involved the children. She took advantage of the vulnerable and the gullible and just the innocent of these young girls.
Absolutely. All right. So, guys, that's it for me for now, at least. But stay tuned with Bob Bianchi. He's defended these type of cases. He'll give you that expert analysis. More here at the Law&Crime Trial Network.